This week I'm looking at some random passages in the Old Testament that, when we read them, our first reaction is to say, "What?" Which is to say, they are passages that rate pretty high on my personal weird stuff-o-meter. Today's passage pretty well pegs a 10 on that meter. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Thursday, June 30th, 2022. Ask most people who Moses' wife was, and they'll usually give a quizzical look because they can't quite remember. The answer? Zipporah. She was the daughter of the priest of Midian, the man who took Moses in after he fled Egypt, having killed an Egyptian whom he saw beating a Hebrew slave. Zipporah only appears on stage a few times, but one of them is so strange that it rates, as I say, very high on my weird stuff-o-meter. Here's the setup. It happens very early in Exodus. Moses has met God at the burning bush on Mount Horeb. God has instructed Moses to go to Pharaoh to convince Pharaoh to let the Hebrews go. But Moses, not once, but 5 times, protests. God finally gets angry with Moses and agrees to bring Moses' brother Aaron into the plan. Finally, Moses does God's bidding and apparently heads off for Egypt. Now comes a passage that seems to interrupt the flow of the story and whose purpose is very obscure. It even contains a reference to God coming after Moses to kill him. Very strange, but here it is. On the way, at a place where they spent the night, the Lord met him and tried to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, "Truly, you are a bridegroom of blood to me." So he let him alone. It was then, she said, a bridegroom of blood by circumcision. Again, what? This passage is so obscure and so strange that its meaning is difficult even to fathom. Other passages that rate high on my weird stuff-o-meter often have a meaning that is partially obscured by the strange portions of the passages, but meanings that are fairly easy to tease out anyway. Not so with this one. This one is so obscure that no one knows quite what to do with it. So let's lay out the 2 problems with the passage. In the first place, and this is a big problem, is what are we to make of the idea that God met Moses in the night and tried to kill him? We might try to explain it away by saying it was an angel of God or some other messenger, but the text is pretty clear. God himself was trying to kill Moses. The second problem is the way Zipporah saves her husband. She performs what can only be described as a very rushed circumcision on their son and then touches Moses with the child's foreskin. Okay, that's just weird. But more than that, we have literally no frame of reference for understanding what this was meant to accomplish. And this is all to say nothing of Zipporah's comment to Moses, "Truly you are a bridegroom of blood to me." The second problem, the protective power of circumcision of their son, while bizarre to us, can at least be understood as some very ancient practice whose meaning has simply not survived for us to understand it. We can take it at face value and move on. Weird, but okay. But the fact that God was trying to kill Moses, this is unsettling in the extreme. Based on the context, many commentators speculate that God's anger with Moses stems from the apparent fact that he had not had his son circumcised before now. It was the most fundamental signifier of Hebrew identity, given to Abraham and passed down through the generations. All Hebrew boys were to be circumcised on the 8th day following their birth. John Calvin speculates, without evidence, mind you, that perhaps Zipporah and her family, not being Hebrews, might have objected to the child being circumcised, and that, as a result, God sought to punish Moses for his act of disobedience in failing to do so. And while there may be truth in it, it still doesn't address the most disturbing thing of all, that God would actively seek to kill anyone, let alone someone he had only just commissioned to speak to Pharaoh on his behalf. So what are we to make of it? For what it's worth, here are my thoughts. In the first place, when it comes to the Bible, we have to be comfortable with the fact that there are things that happen that escape our understanding. We don't have to force an explanation when it is not strictly necessary. And in the second place, and several commentators take this position, the most we can say is that it points to a God who is powerful and even dangerous. We treat God as a buddy at our peril. When we talk about the fear of the Lord, for example, we mostly talk about a sense of awe that is appropriate to such a power, but power that great is also power that can overwhelm and even consume us. We dare not treat God lightly. Like I say, this story absolutely hits the upper end of the dial on my weird stuff-o-meter, but it doesn't have to derail our understanding of the larger biblical narrative. It can simply remain one of those that we shake our heads at and resolve to ask God when our time comes. Tomorrow, the prophet Elisha calls down a curse on a bunch of small boys. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do, this day and in all the days ahead.